Fantastic. We are going to get started now. So first of all, just thank you for joining us. It's brilliant to have you here. This is the first in our autumn series of webinars, and we are hoping to share expertise and give you practical takeaways on leading in the AI revolution, a CEO's guide to bridging tech and teams. We are not here to talk about AI as a gadget or a project, but as something that really can transform a business. And at this point, I personally have got no idea where I sit on the AI adopter scale. I'd say I'm fairly au fait with AI prompts and delighted by using tech products that save some serious admin time, like prepping for a webinar, for example. But obviously, it's a lot bigger than that. And there's a lot more to strategy and how we're going to plan our businesses for the future based on where AI is taking us. So today I've got three brilliant guests. Thank you very much all for joining me. Let me introduce you and then you can sort of say hello. So Clyde Marwick's from People Puzzles. He's a portfolio people director and has extensive experience leading large international HR operations and corporate communication programs. Also a seasoned executive board advisor and accredited leadership and performance coach. So hello, Clyde.
Hi, everyone.
And then next, I have got Fraser Duncombe from Water. So Fraser's not only the CEO, but also the founder of Water, which is an AI software company, which Google described as the next generation of employee engagement. Alongside that, probably quite busy job, sits on the Sussex and Surrey Institute of Technology's Digital and Data Skills Advisory Board. I bet that's a great acronym. But that's all about helping to ensure tomorrow's talent has the data skills that they need. Hi, Fraser.
That's correct. Yeah, hi. Nice to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Brilliant. And then finally with me today, I've got Mark Bolton from the Marketing Centre. Mark spent the last 25 years bringing enterprise software solutions to the market, including advanced ERP solutions and AI solutions, and has worked globally with businesses of all sizes. Mark is really excited by the potential of AI in developing new business models and ways of working. So welcome, Mark. Seems like the perfect guest.
Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited.
Brilliant. So with these three wonderful people, I want to start by setting the stage. So let's look at the big picture and the mindset. And let's challenge some assumptions here. So Clyde, loads of CEOs see AI as a tech challenge. Is this too limiting? Can you give us an example of where reframing AI as a business-wide capability can get us somewhere better?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. I think two things actually dominate the conversations I'm having with my clients at the moment, and it probably won't surprise you, but two things are technology and talent. And it's almost like you would argue it's a bit of a contradiction in terms, but these are the key conversations I'm having with my clients around strategy, around what's sitting on the risk register, but trying to demystify AI. For me, I just think I'm just a simple kind of guy. I look at three questions. And the first thing is, what's the problem you want to solve? Or what's the opportunity do you want to chase? And I think that's really the long and short of it is what are we trying to achieve here, rather than get bogged down into AI and technology roadmaps. The second thing I ask is, do you have leadership intelligence, the right level of leadership intelligence in your organization? And then the third question is AI driving your strategy, or does your strategy weave AI into as an enabler? And I think for me, it's shifting that mindset around thinking about what the strategy needs to embed AI as an enabler for growth, rather than have the standalone, complicated thing. And for me, that just demystifies the issue, focuses on the problem or the opportunity, and then it breaks it into nice small incremental improvements, which I think simplifies things. And then we start working on a roadmap to get there. So that's my approach. and it seems to have worked with my clients that I'm working with.
Yeah, fantastic. It's amazing, isn't it, how it can become such a big, scary thing and doesn't necessarily need to. So, Mark, how do you get leaders to think of AI not just as a tool, but as, I don't know, a member of the organization, a team member, if you will? Has that enabled the unlocking of any new ideas?
Yeah, so Thank you for the question. I recently worked for a company where they treated AI as a staff member or as a department, almost a function, right? Instead of thinking of it as a technology product in the way that you would, your Microsoft Office or your ERP system, they actually thought of this thing as a person. So this company did digital patient recruitment for clinical trials. And traditionally, when a big pharmaceutical company wanted to get someone on a trial, they would feed the trial out to the doctors and they would see patients coming through. And if they saw one that was, relevant, they'd invite them on the trial, or they'd place adverts in the papers. And it was all very slow, very expensive, very hit and miss. What they did was they used AI, set it up as its own department with a completely new business model to listen to search terms. And when they saw someone, and by the way, you'll find this interesting, the two most popular search terms for clinical trials is depression and erectile dysfunction, right? They're the two, but there's obviously thousands of them. But they would listen out for searches. When they found someone, they would geolocate. If they were close to a research center or a test center, they would start placing ads in that person's location. If someone clicked on an ad, the AI would engage, almost have a conversation with them, answer questions, help them fill in the form, and then book them an appointment at the clinical center, right? Completely new way of working, but measured as if it was people doing the job, right? So number of engagements and success rates and so on. But it was super fast, super low cost, never been done before. This company actually within 7 years was sold for nearly $1 billion. That was something that AI enabled, but the people that put that together weren't technologists as such. They were clinicians. They didn't come at it as a technology problem. They came at it as, we could do this with people, but we could do it faster and lower cost with AI. And that's how I'd recommend a lot of the people on the call who are probably non-technical, that's how you should approach it. What is the job that you need to do? Not what technology is available to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. That really tallies with what Clyde said, coming out quite strongly. Fraser, let's hear from you. What do you think the first question a CEO should ask when deciding how AI fits into the strategy?
Yeah, thanks. No, I mean the first question is probably a bit sort of obvious and bland, which is what do you want to achieve? And that seems like the obvious one, but I think we get caught up in too many kind of variants of that question to really kind of focus on it. Listening to Clyde and Mark there, I feel that there's sort of two sides of AI within business. There's giving tools to employees in order to improve their productivity, and there's creating some entity of its own that can do something that the business was not previously able to do. And if the first one is its sort of own question, there are tools on the market that you can provide employees, etc., and you need to get uptake. That's the second one. But I think Mark's example there is really interesting. A lot of people get very caught up on their process. They get caught up on the fact that we, as a pharmaceutical company, go and do this thing. This is the thing we've always done. This is how the market does it, etc., etc. But actually, there is no value in that time spent. The value is in getting the people through the door. And if we can get to that outcome as quickly as possible, that's the really powerful thing. So as a CEO, we need to step back and say, where is the wastage in our process? So I'll give you an example. The people who do all of the IP legal work for Water released a tool called, I believe it's called Search a Brand. And so when you go into apologies for any lawyers on the guest list here, but when you go and ask a trademark lawyer for whether you can do a trademark, they're going to go and do a search for you. They're going to go and see, are there any trademarks registered? They're going to go and see, is anyone using this trademark? How easy is it going to be to do? Is anyone going to oppose it? They're then going to charge you plenty of money for their time and effort, and then they're going to charge you to file, and then they're going to handle any objections, etc., etc. Now, that first bit is of no real value to me. That time spent, if I'm trying to file a trademark, is of no value. value to me. I want the outcome. I care about the outcome. That has value, but the time does not. And so what Brandsmiths have done here is create a tool that will go and use AI to do a kind of semantic search of all of the trademarks available. It'll look across social media, etc., etc., and then it will provide me a report and a one-click button if I want to go and file it. I'm sure there's plenty of ways that they can add onto it later. But what that allows is a totally new way of dealing with this kind of very traditional, heavy service-based thing, turning that into something very, very quick, snappy, and scalable. And I think it's that kind of mindset shift that says, what is it that we want to achieve? Where is the wastage? How are we going to make our process better? And most importantly, how are we going to do that for our customers? Where is the value in what we do, and how can we get to that value as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so it becomes a bigger question then than which bit of sort of tech do I need to solve this problem? But actually, that conversation at a senior leadership team level or at a board level that says, what is it this business is really trying to achieve? And then is there some of that we could be doing in a different way? We could embrace AI, we could approach the problem completely differently. Because you're right, Fraser, it is so tempting to just say, well, we've always had a department that does this, or we've always had a system that does that. And actually to sort of blow that out of the water does take a bit of creative thinking and also a bit of, I guess, adventurous like spirit of moving into trying to do something completely differently. And yeah, that might be a painful thing actually for a senior team to do. It might just be something that they haven't done for ages, not very good at. So having some help, maybe even having that conversation, framing the conversation, no idea is a bad idea. Anyway, thank you very much. It's really interesting, that sort of strategic piece, and whether it is an AI, issue or a business leadership issue. Let's talk a bit more about the how from the why. So how do CEOs and business leaders actually plan and roll out AI across their organization? So let's talk a little bit about non-technical areas. And we have a little bit already with that sort of story of the IP. But Clyde, let me start with you again. Can you give us an example of a case where you've seen AI actually sort of change how something has worked?
Yeah, I've actually there's a few examples actually. I'll try and be short and sweet on this one. I guess the first one for me which was a great learning curve, was working with a client, and they make high tech sort of heating, lighting, and extraction for really hazardous and harsh conditions, so oil and gas and so forth. But the whole principle was this equipment, we're looking to move into the rental market. And the key thing was around how do we move from great customer service to customer obsession? And the key thing was, so what we did was we obviously needed to recruit talent in that particular area. But the other piece was, how do we overlay that with AI technology? So it was a really, really interesting, and it's evolving as we speak, around how do we automate customer response and feedback technology through AI. But what I found fascinating was around how do we embed sort of product knowledge through AI chatbots, because the technical nature of the equipment was quite key. So we were having lots of people trying to explain product, and we got a lot of data on the specific products and how they can operate in these harsh conditions. And what we're seeing is a kind of a nice combination of talent, so human intelligence and artificial intelligence running in parallel, all around driving customer obsession in this particular area. So that's been fascinating. The second example is I've just recruited a full HR function for a very large road and bridges construction and maintenance business. And what we're doing at the moment, in particular in the learning and development side, is looking at AI-enabled learning management systems. So how do we look at a sort of automated content generation, specifically for a wide range of people that work there, from front-end road workers to bridge engineers to environmentalists. So that's been interesting, and we've developed, although we have an annual operating plan and come down to what is the problem we're trying to solve, We've got a technology roadmap weaved in to that particular plan as well. So how do we automate? How do we make sure we're more efficient? And that, but I think the key thing is around learning and learning management systems, and I mean, we haven't even started around candidate attraction, performance management. I mean, the opportunities are significant, but we're starting at a pretty low base. So a couple of examples.
Yeah, and so much I think of that kind of thing you've talked about, learning management, it's just admin, isn't it? As Fraser said earlier, there's some jobs that are done in an organization that almost, sort of they don't add value, but they have to be done. They take time. And I think those are the easy things, aren't they? That we sort of all would say, oh yeah, AI can replace those sort of really simple things, but the complexity and the use is really stretching out across the spectrum of office jobs. Fraser, have you got an example for us as well of where AI has transformed an unexpected department or area?
Yeah, I mean, actually, this one comes from internally at Water, and it's actually something that we're looking at the moment. We're scaling up our marketing department and everything that we're kind of doing there. But truth is, we're hiring AI, not people at this time. And this is I think it's we can't have this discussion without touching on the the kind of elephant in the room, right? That we're talking here very academically about people's lives, and that is something that we have to be sensitive to. Work is pretty crucial to to most people in earning their ability to live and feed themselves and look after themselves, and so. We need to be able to, we're at this kind of duality, right? Business needs to improve, it needs to continue, it needs to remain competitive. And at the same time, we want to do the right thing, for people. And so I don't have all the answers. This is a big, question. You could have a whole series of webinars on that question alone. So I don't want to kind of go into that, but we do need to, to be aware that is the case. And it's one thing to kind of hire AI rather than hire a human. It's another thing to replace an entire department. But these are the questions and decisions we need to make. And, there's the age-old kind of suggestion that by increasing our productivity within business, we increase our level of, operations. And that means that, okay, maybe the admin function of the L&D team doesn't exist anymore. And so the people working on that role aren't there, but there's something else that they can do. And we can bring them around to that. And hopefully, responsible business leaders in this area are doing that. But that reminds me of a conversation I was having with a CEO recently. He works in recruitment. In temp recruitment, one of the big sort of issues that you have is you have to collect all of the timesheets for all of your temp workers, and then you have to collate all that and stick it into your own payroll system and manage the payrolls, etc. There's sign-off procedures, etc. The other admin-heavy area is compliance, especially if you're working in a regulated area. This person works in some building and infrastructure, and so you've got do they have their necessary qualifications to work on site, etc. And both of those, they fit that kind of admin heavy, low value to client area that you can automate quite easily. And this CEO has a conundrum because he was presented with a product that would take all of this admin away from him, but he's equally looking at a team of 10 people who provide this. And so I'll let the audience kind of decide what the CEO should do in that area. I don't think he's worked it out either yet, but there's an awful lot we can do here. I think there's also a question of how much should we do, and that's not a simple question.
Yeah, well, I mean, sitting here thinking about the changes in employment laws that are coming in shortly, the government has taken an interesting line, which I'm not going to comment on too much today. But the harder you make it for employers to, to attract and then move people on, the more tempting a bit of technology feels in reality. So anyway, I was just reading an article yesterday about how many tribunal claims are coming in from people who they believe are using AI to write their complaint letters. And so cases that maybe previously would have not been brought or would have been, sort of dealt with fairly quickly are now being brought to the tribunals much more comprehensively by good old ChatGPT. So yeah, we are sometimes feels in a bit of a war with you know, how the tech's being used, both in terms of people's jobs, but also in terms of the legislation we're operating under. Anyway, that's an aside. I'm going to move on swiftly. So just Fraser, while I'm, you know, while you're talking, can I ask you who should own this AI inside a company? Should it be a CIO? Do we all need one of those? Do we need a COO who's responsible? You know, lots of people in smaller businesses aren't going to have the expertise that they necessarily need to make this sort of how and rolling out the strategy particularly easy.
Yeah, I mean, if we split that into two questions, do you need someone responsible? The answer is yes. I think every management structure that certainly that I've read says that there should be a single person responsible for, you know, big things, because otherwise you struggle with accountability. So you need someone. Then the question is who? It reminds me of Mo Gaudat, whose book I love, Solve for Happy, and he points out in there that every super successful person in the world, regardless of what they're doing, has one thing in common, and that's that they love what they do. So if you give an AI challenge to some, you know, to the COO who is otherwise a technophobe and hates AI, I can guarantee you now this is not going to work. And so I think the way that you need to tackle this is really to go out quite broadly and ask who wants to do it, and see who gets excited. You can then have questions over, is this person senior enough to handle this, or do they need a sort of mentor, etc., etc. But there is a correlation between age and you know, technology and being sort of okay with it. And so it may well be that someone less senior or currently not with a seat at the table is actually the best person in your organization to do this. And I think we need to be open to that. There's an awful lot that we can learn. And I bring you back to the comment, you know, if they love what they're doing, I'm pretty confident they'll do a good job. I'm sure there are exceptions. People can fire those at me as well. But I think that would be, you know, be that question.
Well, and actually, in a way, the employment market out there is it's employer's choice, apparently. And you could argue we should be really talking about AI in every job advert, certainly in sort of decision making and people who are going to bring their ideas into the business. Because if you don't have somebody now, you could actually put that into your next hire's job description and find somebody who really does love it to bring some new skills like that into the organization. So that's interesting. We say we've got somebody, we've got some strategy, we know what we want to achieve, we've got somebody in the business who loves AI. Mark, what next? Where do we prioritize with AI adoption? Have you got any examples of, can you do it all at once? Do you need a phased rollout? Where do you go next?
Yeah, so I slightly disagree, by the way, with one person owning AI. I think it's a core team task, cross-functional. You need someone from each area of the business, really, but you need to think of it holistically, because AI crosses departmental borders and boundaries, and it's all about the workflow of how something goes from, you know, design through manufacturing out through marketing and sales, gets delivered, serviced. AI's got a role in all of that everywhere. I'm not talking about your ERP system, but you know, somewhere along the line it can play pretty much everywhere. So I think a cross-departmental core team is, in my experience, the best approach, but you know, each to their own.
Well, just to jump in, I totally agree with you. I still think any team needs a leader. So you've got to have the team, you've got to have the leader, and that creates the kind of structure. But certainly, yeah, having AI in one area of the business and nowhere else is equally a poor decision. Totally.
Yeah, but I think what I'm trying to say is, don't have the marketing person looks at AI in the marketing department and the finance director looks at AI in the finance department, because they have to join up, and someone's got to have that bigger picture of how things work through the company, and that's why I think a core team. I would actually, so firstly, no one's starting with AI, whether you like it or not. You've already got it. Everybody uses, you know, office applications, whether it's Microsoft or Google or whatever, you've almost certainly got some sort of CRM or marketing automation. Trust me, these tools all have AI built in now. As long as you're on the latest version, you've got AI in your business. Now, whether or not you're using it is one thing, and whether or not you're using it effectively and optimally is another thing. But you've already got it. So I think the first thing everybody needs to do is a little bit of an audit. What have we got? How are we using it? Are we using it correctly? Are we going to get in trouble here? Are we giving our secrets away? And then set some priorities. You know, where's the low-hanging fruit that we could go after quickly? But I think you should look at it in kind of 4 levels, really. If you're a non-technical senior executive in a business, think of AI in 4 levels. So the first level is just general AI, right? Your chat GPTs and all these other tools that are out there that you've heard about. Just kind of, you just need a high level familiarization with what they can do. What is agentic, you know, agent AI, right? What is that? What can it do? Maybe what's coming next, but you know, it doesn't have to be technical. Just familiarize yourself with what's happening. The second layer down is what's happening in my industry, whether that's oil and gas, manufacturing, whatever it is. What is AI being used for in my industry? The third thing is my company, right? We kind of touched on this. You've almost certainly already got it, but my company, whether you're a small company, a medium, large company, whether you work in one jurisdiction or you're becoming international, you know, where does AI fit in that? Can I be using it for translations? Could I be using it for product design if you're a product company in my business? And then the fourth layer is my job. What are my peers doing with AI, right? How can I, you know, be optimum at my function, whether it's a finance function or product design function or selling or whatever it is. So if you think of it in those 4 levels: general, your industry, your business, what your competitors are doing and so on, and then your function, what are my peers doing? You'd be the expert in the room, I think, where you'd be going into these core team meetings and you probably know more than 99% of the other people in that meeting. But that would be, you know, a good way of looking at it. The funny thing is, my closing remark on this point, AI can help you with all of that research, right? If you prompt it correctly, it will give you the reading material you need to be expert in each of those 4 levels.
Yeah. And it's funny because even you saying AI in our industry,
Hmm.
isn't that an easy one just to miss out? And
Yeah.
maybe just think because you're different or you're special or you do things a better way than maybe some of your competitors, you might not even think to look at their, you know, look at what they're doing. So
And you'll
yeah.
be really shocked on what information people make public, and AI will find that for you. So if you want to know what tools your competitors are using, ask AI and it will give you a pretty good insight into the tools that they're using and what AI is probably in use in that business and so on.
Yeah, great. Well, so then, Clyde, once you have hopefully put into place some plans, how do you know if it's really adding the value you thought it was going to? Can you set AI KPIs, metrics? How do you know it's improving anything?
Yeah, it's always a toughie. If I think of, you know, how many businesses are investing in AI technology right now, and you know, the budget's been put aside, but not a lot of doing measuring return on investment, and that's something I'm being asked quite regularly. I think there's four KPIs or 4 areas where you should be measuring, and I think from my perspective gives you a holistic view on things. First one is decision-making KPIs. And I think those are really around, and it's a combination of human and AI insight. So what's the information, the intelligence that we're getting in the marketplace that's informing decisions? And how accurate are those particular decisions? What's the success rate coming out of those decisions based on the insights we're getting? So I think decision-making KPIs is a real opportunity there. Then there's growth or innovation KPI. So through the use of human intelligence and artificial intelligence, what's driving growth and innovation? Are we looking at things differently? Have we embedded a new product? as an output of AI opportunity, which I think is key. So what are the growth innovation type KPIs that we should be looking at? The other obvious one is culture KPIs, and I know this is Fraser's domain. We can get incredible insight from our employee base in terms of employee sentiment, how people are collaborating more effectively, especially in a virtual world, AI learning engagement. So culture KPIs, I think, there's a range of them. And then the last one, which is maybe most obvious, is efficiency KPIs. So doing things smarter, quicker, without rework, looking at speed and accuracy. And for me, those are the 4 fundamental KPIs. And when you say them in that way, it doesn't make it sound that complicated. But I think people overcomplicate the technology piece. So for me, it's those 4.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, it's this is definitely taking us on a journey, isn't it? We've talked about strategy, we've talked about operations, but of course AI won't succeed without people. And of course, being from People Puzzles, I'm going to be all about the people. And it was nice to see that you had some cultural, people-related KPIs there. So let's talk about this, because lots of people are really afraid of AI. They're afraid of AI stealing their jobs. You talked earlier, Fraser, about how people rely on work. They need the income. It's the structure. It's the foundation for a lot of us. So we're also very aware that lots of new technology projects fail and don't deliver the massive promised golden land of high productivity that was maybe promised by the people that sold us the software. So, Fraser, let's start with you then. What approaches have you seen succeed or fail when introducing an AI-based product and maybe implementation is rocky?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, there's that study that came out a couple of weeks ago, showed that 95% of AI applications in enterprise fail, which is pretty staggering, really. I think where I've seen it go wrong is, and this is kind of evident in a lot of the training that's given on AI. AI it's not just a new way to use Microsoft Excel or a new way to write emails quicker, etc. It requires a new way of thinking to say, what can I do here that I couldn't do before? I'll give you an example. I recently went to a networking group. I'm part of a networking group down on the South Coast, and I get a delegate list beforehand. And I fed my delegate list into Gemini's deep research and said, tell me who's going. These are my criteria. Who should I have conversations with? And within 10 minutes, it had given me this big report and said, here's 5 people you need to go talk to. And I could go back and say, okay, can you give me their job titles and what should I look out for, etc., etc. But that sort of thing wasn't possible before, not realistically, not within the time frame that I had, because I had other work to do. And so when we want these things to go right, we need to explain to people what they're going to benefit from it. And we need to focus on that level, not this is how you upload a document to ChatGPT and then you press go and then this thing happens. That's important, but that's second, that's later. The first thing is this is how it's going to improve. And so one of the bits of advice I saw on this that I really quite liked is for someone who is a skeptic on AI and isn't using it yet. And one thing I have noticed is that people don't use it until they start using it, and then they become obsessed with it. There doesn't really seem to be a middle ground. The best way to kickstart that is to say, what's something that really frustrates you, that you don't know the answer to, that takes all of your time? Just ask ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever you use. Ask it, well, how can I do this better? What am I missing? What's that? And you will be staggered by what it can bring back. And with all of these things, the more information you give it, the more you'll get out. So if you just say, how can I do my accounting better? It'll give you a relatively generic answer. If you say, I do this and I do this and I do this and I don't do this and I don't want to do this and this has worked in the past and etc. To give it all that information, press go, you will be staggered. I think that's the level that we need to be approaching people on if we want them to work.
I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking of the things that annoy me the most as a parent, and thinking, yeah, if only we could sort of outsource all of the admin of our children to AI, but maybe that's coming, and I just need to be a bit more patient. So, thank you. It does raise the question of what can I do I didn't do before? Because you're right, we're so programmed to the things we like doing that we just want to sort of slightly improve the minor things. So yeah, that is quite an interesting sort of big picture question, isn't it? Clyde, what do you think about training teams to work alongside AI? How can we upskill people? You talked about learning and management systems already.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think every single client that I work with has asks me to do two types of training: early career development and leadership development. And sometimes they intertwine, because you've got early career who are early managers, and that's another whole challenging subject for another webinar, maybe, Ali. But for me, it's by doing those, I tend to weave AI and technology into the conversation. So, for example, it's early career. Ironically and contradictorily, I'm spending more time talking about social intelligence, because it's about emotional intelligence and how do we get young people to understand human dynamics. But at the same time, the importance of using technology to a large extent. And I'm very fortunate and privileged. I work probably across all 5, possibly 6 generations in the workforce right now. So I am tested in many ways in terms of how I weave technology, sort of AI and leadership and human intelligence into things. I think the other key thing that I'm starting to do a lot more work on is a conversation that, things that Fraser and Mark have indicated around how do we develop AI talent and upskill the workforce from a technology point of view. So it's finding people that either have a skill, a willingness, and actually putting them onto development programs, education programs around building, AI technical expertise in the business. But I think it all falls back down to a big demand from businesses. How do I develop social intelligence? How do I develop, and specifically when you look at leadership development, the importance of AI and technology in terms of a modern leader's role. In particular, ethics, Ali, your point around, employees are very tuned in now when it comes to employment regulation. I had a situation where I had an employee actually use AI as if they were a lawyer. So we got this lawyer's letter in. It actually, when you looked at it in a bit more detail, it was actually AI driven from an employee who was disgruntled. So leaders have to deal with all that sort of complexity. So I don't know if that's answered the question, but it's a mesh of all these factors.
Well, and in the same way that when computers came in, it wasn't like nobody had to be upskilled to use them,
Exactly.
I guess there's a challenge in there, I think, Clyde, which is let's get upskilled. I mean, it's great you guys are on the webinar. That's part of it, all of these things. But bringing some of that AI upskilling and conversation about it into the workplace is going to be increasingly important, because if you don't talk about it, how on earth are people meant to keep up to date with it? Mark, it's interesting because so many companies are automating, in particular, things like customer service. And now these days, it's so hard to talk to a person, isn't it? You're onto a chatbot or you're onto some machine. How can CEOs build trust around AI with customers or maybe with employees? Because this trust in the system feels a bit like up for grabs at the moment. Oh, Mark, I've lost you. You're on mute. There we go.
Yeah. I had some noise outside, sorry. Yeah, Fraser touched on this earlier, right? That the CEOs or any of the senior leadership team in a business are in a very difficult place when it comes to communicating, what the company is going to do with AI, right? The CEO in particular and the CFO have a particular difficult role, because you've got these different audiences. You've got investors who typically want to know that you're all like you're totally on the ball with AI. You've built into your plans. We're going to save money. We're going to go quicker. We're going to improve customer service. We're going to put AI everywhere it can fit and drive cost out of the business. It's all going to be great. And then you've got employees on the other end worrying about their job and so on. Maybe you've got partners in the channel that are worried about quality of service. We've all dealt with a bot on the phone and got frustrated. I don't think they're there fully yet all the time. But somewhere along the line, you've got to communicate. The truth is, AI's here, and it's an absolute bulldozer that's going to keep coming through. So yes, it's going to be in our plans. In some cases, yes, there may be cost savings that the business can make by implementing AI. But a lot of the times you've got to put a positive spin on it and say, we are looking at new ways of doing business. We're looking at improving the ways we're currently doing business, going faster. I've just done a blog, funny enough, went live in the last 48 hours on the Marketing Centre. And I talk about basically business improvement, new ways of doing business, but you've got to treat AI as a member of staff. So if you're driving growth with it, AI is not going to replace the senior executives in a business. It's not there yet, right? And I gave a number of examples of where people have tried setting up companies with just AI, running it, and it didn't work. It was dismal failure, right? There are a lot of low-level jobs that are probably threatened by AI, but you need a mix of humans and AI. You need experience, you need common sense, you need interpersonal skills, emotional skills that AI lacks. Certainly it does today. 5 or 10 years down the line, who knows what's going to happen. But right now, I don't see AI replacing entire workforces or running entire companies. And so the communications has to be realistic, but I don't think every job's going to go overnight. I just don't see that.
Yeah. Well, look, as you've all been saying, this really is the next business revolution, and we are right in the middle of it already. And going through these cultural changes is no easy feat. We at People Puzzles talk about long-term cultural change being a matter of years, not minutes or hours. And I'm sort of very aware we're nearly getting to some time to answer some questions. Thank you very much if you've put a question in the chat already. If you would like to do that, please do that now. But let's just briefly look at the sort of future-proofing element of this, because we're sort of so far into the AI revolution. It's going on, it's moving on. We don't know how long, how big, how far it's going to change from here. And Fraser, I'm going to just skip straight to you here. What can CEOs do to future-proof their organization's relationship with AI? Because who knows what's going to come next year or in 3 years' time?
Yeah, I think that the trend within the AI market is interesting. For a long time, we were told by the people that were working on it that it was a few years away, but we were going to have this thing that was going to do everything. And that's a fearful place to make decisions, because you sort of feel, well, I'm going to put in a load of resources now, but everything's going to change, etc. What we're seeing, and I think OpenAI's release of GPT-5 kind of shows this, is that the step changes we were seeing before, from GPT-2 to 3 to 3 to 3.5 to 4, blah, 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 those were big step changes that offered really meaningful improvement. And now we're kind of in the realm of benchmark upgrades. Everyone can post a better stat than the previous model, but really we're not evolving new sort of capability on top of that. What that means is, hopefully, that the kind of era of AI hype, i.e., every problem is going to be solved by AI tomorrow, is over. And we'll find that a lot of AI companies that have kind of ridden the hype wave without a lot of substance will fall away, as Warren Buffett, said, when the tide goes out, you find who's not wearing any swimming trunks. In turn, what that means is that the companies who are genuinely using AI to solve meaningful problems and are using the capabilities that are available now as opposed to just relying on some update coming out that fixes all of their problems, those things are going to become very, very powerful. If you look at what Google announced, I was lucky to go out to Vegas this year for Cloud Next. If you look at what they announced with regards to their Salesforce integrations for customer service, they are incredible. And they are at a level where you would barely know that you're not talking to a human, and they are able to do things faster and quicker than humans. So we are going to see that change coming, and we need to be able and aware. And so from a CEO's perspective, where does that put us? I think one of the things that we need is curious leadership. Now, I've been working with a lady called Kim Adele Randall. She's about to release a book on this, and she interviewed me for it. It was very kind. But if we have leadership that is curious about what can be achieved, as opposed to the old school method of, I already know everything, this is how I've already done it, that is where we are. So there isn't a place right now. You can't truly future-proof something by saying, go do this thing, because we don't know what the future looks like. What we need to be doing is keeping abreast of what those changes are. If there are any terms I mentioned there, GPT-5, etc., go find out what it means, because it might actually have a genuine sort of use to your business. Agentic workforce, agentic AI is the big thing. Google's agent space is coming out. There's sort of lists upon lists upon lists. Ask AI about them. Whatever you're doing, get curious, get finding out, because it may well unlock something you think, oh gosh, we didn't think of that, and that would be incredible. And it just takes one or two of those moments to really rocket us forward.
Yeah. And we're not going to talk about robotics today, but that sort of was crossing my mind when you were saying all of that. So I'm not going to go down there. But, the thing I think I've really taken from, do we have people on our team who are tech curious? And you mentioned age earlier, Fraser, but actually any age person can be interested in and committed to sort of future tech. So I'm sort of feeling like, oh yeah, and maybe next time we hire, that should actually go. I mean, who's got a company value around anything to do with curiosity or of the tech or the AI coming down the line? It's kind of not something maybe that's that high on our agendas or prioritizing at the moment, but it definitely feels like it's going to have to be with the way the world's going. I'm aware that I've got some questions. So before we do some questions, I would just like to ask you all, can I have just sort of one summing up sentence? If you were going to speaking directly to any business leader who's listening on their AI journey, have you got a top tip or a challenge? Mark, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, embrace it. Whether you like it or not, it's coming, right? And it's going to be part of the business landscape going forward. So embrace it, learn about it, don't leave it to others. Maybe approach it with the 4 layers I outlined earlier. And basically treat it almost like a staff member, right? Maybe a junior member of staff or a mid-management layer of staff. But most people in a senior position, they're experienced people managers. That doesn't mean they're good people managers, but they're experienced of managing people. Think of AI in the same way. Make it really clear what the job spec is, make it really clear how it's being measured, and then review regularly, reset measurements where needed, and treat it like a member of staff almost.
Yeah. It's so funny because again, while you were saying that, I was just thinking through whenever I'm talking to Gemini in my car, I end up yelling at it because it really gets it so incredibly wrong. It either doesn't understand what I'm saying or it just tells me something completely different. Don't do that with your members of staff. Maybe you can, polish up your people management before you start talking to people how you talk to Gemini. Anyway, Clyde, what's your sort of top tip, top sentence?
What's my strap line? I think don't stop maximizing your people intelligence, because that's going to be the fundamental cornerstone of success in AI. I think see AI as your productivity partner. And I think the key thing for me is don't just use AI, think with AI. because what I'm finding a lot is that we are getting into a state where there's an over-reliance of AI, and I think sometimes it's stopping people thinking. And I think that's a careful point. So use AI, but think with it. So those would be my headlines, Ali.
Thank you. Thank you. Fraser, what's yours before we go into the questions?
Yeah, I suppose similar to the last answer I gave. Get curious. There's this whole kind of world out there, and if you dip your toe in, it's really exciting. And the second thing is don't be precious. It's something I touched on earlier. The way that you've always done it is not going to be good enough. Your competitors are using AI, your suppliers are using AI, your customers are using AI and other tools and products. Their expectations are changing, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. We can have that argument separately, but they are changing. And you just doing what you always did is not going to be enough. So be curious and don't be precious.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So let's take my first question that I've got here. Fraser, you mentioned AI implementation can fail due to fails in training. Where can you go and find the best training? And then Clyde, I'm going to come to you on how do you upskill the workforce? So Fraser, starting with you, where do we get great training?
Yeah, I don't have an answer in terms of here's a single thing you can go to. I can think of, for example, if you want to be able to prompt better, Google have a brilliant guide on prompting. I'm sure if you Google prompting guide, then you'll probably get that. But one thing that I do think, and what I was really kind of trying to touch on there is about the purpose of the issue in the first place, as opposed to just teaching the sort of practical methodology. Where I see anything being learnt most successfully is when someone has a project that they want to complete that they currently don't know how to complete, because the project is the thing that keeps us excited. I'll give an example. If you want to learn French and you go to evening classes, you can go to evening classes for 3, 5, 10 years and still be a mediocre French speaker. If you go and live in France for 3 months and speak French every single day, you'll get very, very good very, very quickly. And so finding a way to immerse people in a project that is meaningful to them, even better if you can let them choose it themselves, that's going to be how they're going to learn the quickest. The resources to do that, I suppose that depends on the project.
Yeah, nice. Learning while doing it. Great. Clyde, over to you. How do we upskill our teams?
I think the first thing is ask them. And I think that's what we're doing. And I'm working with a space engineering business. We have developed an innovation team that with a strong bias to technology. These guys are quantum physicists and astroscience scientists, very early career, and they've self-nominated. So there's a team around that, and how do we educate and weave it through the business. And then another client I'm working with, we high reliance on graduate engineers. There must be 150 in one intake. So there's a graduate conference at the end of the month, and what's happening is we're using the graduates as one of the outputs of that particular conference. We're going to develop an AI technology team, and this is road and bridge construction. What does that mean for us? And we're going to get that group to kind of lead on that. So I think get your people involved, and they'll tell you it's an easy starting point. Yes, you might have to put some boundaries in place, but in some direction. But I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, great. And I'd just add to that, I think if you get it on the agenda and make it a regular thing, like this is the main problem with training in any organization, is that it's a one-hit wonder. You do a day's training on this, and then 2 years later, you might do another day. What about just a working lunch once a month or once a fortnight, and get someone different to bring something each time? And then it's a sort of opportunity for training up people to do presentations or running workshops. And actually, I'd probably go to ChatGPT for a bit of help if I was running a session like that. But there is stuff out there. But I think weaving it into your company's learning, and actually, what Clyde was saying earlier about leadership and social skills. You could actually marry all of that up in a really nice set of employee development. Mark, I'm going to ask you the next question. How do you even go about approaching generating an AI strategy? Can you recommend an approach?
Well, I think and we touched on this earlier, you got to start with what do you want trying to achieve, you know, and that could come from the investors and the board or leadership team, but what is it that you actually want to achieve? And then work downwards from that. How do, you know, we're here today, how do we get there? Another thing though is that, and this touches on the previous point actually of how people get familiar with it. As I said earlier, most companies have got AI inside it already, right? Because it comes through the door embedded in other products, right? So for example, if you're running HubSpot, and I'm sure that a lot of the companies on this call will have that as the leader for, you know, smaller and mid-market businesses in marketing automation. They've done a great job of embedding AI all the way through. It will generate a campaign for you now. It will pull the data. It will analyze the results. That's a good way of teaching staff, right? And understanding all that functionality that's already in there, tried, tested, good learning courses available for it as well. Go back to your goals, what we want to achieve, and then use those embedded tools to help you get there, right? With rather than sort of a complete re-engineering of your infrastructure of let's go and find a standalone tool and build an AI lab, and you know, it's already in there in a lot of the tools that you already have in your business. Go and use those to start, because knowledge of AI will rise. You'll see really positive results, I guarantee it. You'll hit some of your goals and your KPIs, and everybody will learn a lot along the way.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Mark. So look, it's nearly 1:30, so I'd love to say thank you to all of you for being on the panel, and thank you to everybody for joining us. As just a little challenge to go away with, why don't you pick one area of your business where AI is still treated as a tech project? And within the next month, just think about how it could be more of a cross-functional initiative. And if you'd like to have any resources or introductions, the people on the panel are available. Please do ask us any questions and get in touch with us about next steps. We're going to be continuing our webinar series in October. The next one is on getting investment ready, how a CEO's guide to supercharging growth through funding. So please do keep an eye out, connect with us on LinkedIn and stay in touch. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day and see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye.